Can I just say how delighted I am that quite a number of people seem to have stayed. This is known as the tea time slot, and it's the one that no one ever wants to draw. But I'm delighted and very much appreciative of people who've listened to one very long debate, and I suspect are staying on for a football debate as well afterwards. Conference, I'm really pleased to have the opportunity today to start a conversation with you on what for me is quite a new portfolio. As you know, Nick Clegg asked me to take on a sort of cross-departmental role on families to complement the work that is done so well by Annette Brooke along with David Laws. But I have to confess to you, I am a strange choice, because who do the Tories turn to for insight on ordinary families? Ian Duncan Smith, of course. I mean, it's classic Cameron. If you want to understand the peasants, you ask the squire. Who do Labour turn to? Now, Labour, of course, has found a new guru to front their conversations with families. It's Jeremy Kyle. And I understand that he won the job with his episode featuring "I'm a binge drinker and a drug dealer, but I'll be a great dad." So you can imagine how out of step Nick Clegg must appear, overlooking my roles as a mother, a grandmother, a one-time housewife, and just taking the risk. Now, I have believed that the power which government holds is delegated to it by the people in order to live in a civilized society. But the very fact that such power is delegated only sets a severe limit on the right of any government to interfere with the personal lives of individuals. And perhaps this has given us a strange inhibition as a party, discouraging us from shouting out about our policies for families. I mean, we know that it's not the role of government to tell families how to live their lives, and it's certainly not the role of government to select one family structure as the ideal choice. But Liberal Democrats recognise real families as they exist in all their variations and complexity: traditional families, families centred on heterosexual relationships, but also gay and lesbian relationships, multi-generational families, step families, extended families, single-parent families. And we argue for government to provide support and opportunity for those real families, since they are indeed the foundation on which our society rests. Now, Labour has made some progress, but it's been slow and stilted, and has failed to do anything beyond tinker at the edges of a system that is failing families every day. Labour has demonstrated that it cannot stand up for families that are struggling with a changing world of demands and different stresses. It has improved maternal leave, but it's done very little for fathers, and it's the absence of a relationship between father and children that is one of the major causes of social breakdown that blights so many areas, from antisocial behaviour and crime to school failure and eating disorders that devastate the individual. Now, when the Tories talk of families, they prefix it with the word traditional. They're stuck in a mid-20th century time warp. I mean, David Cameron won't help real families, modern families, because he doesn't understand them. His party is so uncomfortable with non-traditional relationships that every time it returns to family policy, the centrepiece is once again a tax break for marriage or tentatively persuading mothers to stay home, but without the meaningful funding to let them do so. £20 a week, or simply shifting the timing of child benefit. These are hardly answers, but they are the Tory headlines. And how inadequate, how superficial, how Cameron-esque. So let me address, in what is a brief speech, 4 areas which government needs to act to strengthen families in their ability to enhance our lives and happiness, which after all is what we all desire. Families, whatever their structure, raise our children. Allow children to grow loved, happy, healthy, and educated, and we have achieved our goal. Early bonding between parents and child is key, and that is as true for father as it is for mother. And we know, for example, that fathers who bond with their children early are more likely to continue a close relationship with that child, even if the partnership with mum breaks down. But do we realistically allow both parents that time for bonding and the opportunity? Do we even attempt to value it? Do we challenge the stereotype, as countries like Sweden do, that it's only mothers who stay home with small children? As Liberal Democrats, we were ahead of the other political parties on the policies that would allow mother to stay home for the first year of a child's life. Well, why not make that parental leave? And if both parents are willing to play a part, extend that leave to 18 months. That way, we not only enable close bonding and a firm parenting for both parents, but we also give the family flexibility. Now, I put forward this idea first and foremost because it benefits families and children. But can I suggest to you that creating a dynamic for fathers as well as mothers to take meaningful time away from work, to bond with and care for a new child, has a rather desirable side effect. It challenges the temptation to discriminate against women in the workplace. In fact, I say to you men, since you can father children throughout your lives, it will be to you to whom Alan Sugar will have to put the question, are you planning to get married and to have children? But families require ongoing flexibility to manage the continuing challenge of bringing up young children. Now, over these last months, I've been looking at childcare options for young children under 5. We held a consultation session on this issue only yesterday. 1 in 4 mothers already work part-time and 40% full-time, and for nearly all of them, flexible, quality, affordable childcare is a major concern. And this will become more pressing as economic hard times worsen and even more families feel the pressure to have more than one income in the household. I am a granny of 2 toddlers, which is why 12-hour days at conference are such a doddle. My daughter and my daughter-in-law are typical of young mums. They're women who love to care for their kids, but they find, as it were, work, that leaves them. That's a feeling that they're sort of drying on the vine. These mothers that I have spoken to overwhelmingly want the ability to work part-time when their children reach 18 months or so. Mums who stay at home often say they would love to have meaningful part-time work, not just for the money or to keep up a career, but frankly for the sake of their sanity. And mums who are full-time would often leap at the chance to cut back to part-time if only it was an accepted career strategy, treated as normal work pattern by employers. Well, let's start taking the desire for part-time work seriously. In our consultation, we looked at providing at least 20 or maybe 25 free childcare hours every week for every child from the age of 18 months until the start of school at 5. Now, this would not actually be conditional on working, and I'll explain more about that later, but it would enable part-time work without childcare worries. And I believe that a program like this would lead to a seismic shift towards work structures that make part-time quality jobs far more feasible. But let me go back to that reference I made to childcare provision for 18 months to 5 years, being available both to parents who work and to those who do not. Now, I recognize that this will be a challenging commitment, but I believe that it is vital if we are to give every child a real opportunity to achieve its potential. We have to break those shackles in British society today, shackles which mean that it is still the parent's income which predicts the future success for a child, not that child's innate ability. The Scandinavian countries have broken those shackles, and we can if we're willing to act. The statistics make it clear that it's usually children in workless households who are most vulnerable to being left behind by their peers, even from the day they start school, because they have lacked the stimulation and the opportunities to develop that other children take for granted. One of my local teachers pointed out to me just last week that children in many disadvantaged homes are hearing 300 or 400 words a week, and that forms the basis of their development. But children in typical homes hear 3,000 to 4,000 words a week. He went on to say that with that difference, week in, week out from birth, you have to expect a gap that is almost impossible to bridge. To be already behind when just learning to speak and run is a pretty devastating handicap to overcome. So I'm not talking about childcare as just watch over baby, but using it as a tool to bring all children, if their parents are willing, those pre-education experiences, the enriched play and preparation for formal learning that gives every child the opportunity to flower. The 20-hour childcare provision would wrap within it and bring to much younger children the commitment to early years education. In effect, we would be extending the early years development focus, which today starts at age 3, to all children from 18 months. And if you don't think this provision would be used, let me tell you that 96% of children aged 3 already use the early years education provision. If we do it well, and we must, and we offer it with flexibility and sensitivity to the child's age, I believe that we can give all our children a meaningful chance to reach their potential. Now, you would have to make sure that the training of childminders and nursery workers is focused on quality. That training must recognize the requirements of children with special needs and disabilities. And for those parents who choose to stay home, who choose not to work, or parents who choose informal childcare, such as a grandparent or a friend, we would need to make sure that they had access to those development opportunities too. But while early support for children is crucial, we have to go farther for those families who are ensnared in the complexities and crises that fall outside the mainstream, the most vulnerable families. I mean, vulnerable families face serious issues of poverty. Many suffer from drugs or alcohol abuse amongst family members. But today, I would like to take a few moments to talk about the most neglected issue of all, and that is how we respond to severe mental illness within the family. This government, and other governments before it, have failed utterly to meet the needs of families with severe mental health problems. My staff surveyed local authorities up and down the country to try and get just a grip on the scale of the problem. And most local authorities had few answers to any of our questions. Others reported nearly all children in care in some way affected, either by mental health problems in the family or suffering themselves. When we look for coherent services to respond to families with mental health problems, we found the occasions of those services to be really rare. We found fragmentation and confusion, and the children were nearly always the losers. Here's just one illustration. The backstop, the last resort for families with the most need of intensive therapeutic treatment requiring residential care, is one hospital only in all of England, Wales, and Scotland. It's the Castle Hospital in my constituency, and it can barely serve 20 families a year. Now, you tell me if this makes any sense, if the alternative to treating the family is to take away the children and put them in care. You tell me if it makes any sense to leave mental illness untreated when we know that 85% of children in penal custody show signs of personality disorder and 10% show signs of psychotic illness. And tell me what sense it makes to treat the adult and forget the child, or the child and forget the adult. It's time that each area of the country had a recognized hub of mental health expertise in dealing holistically with families with the capability to provide outreach across our communities. Let me touch now on one last issue. I don't have time to do it justice, but it's an area that most of us in politics, with some noble exceptions, have failed to face up to, and it's the issue of the family courts. I am not impressed by the tactics of some of the extremists who say they speak for fathers, but I am impressed by many of the arguments of the other groups that represent both dads and mums who have little or no access to their children. Sometimes there are very good reasons for limiting or denying a parent's access. But I join those who believe that it is compatible with putting the child's interests first, to start with a presumption that both parents will continue to be part of parenting and custody even when their own relationship breaks down. And I also join with those who are extremely worried by the stories of parents separated from their children, for life sometimes in fast-track adoptions, in what appear from the outside to be arbitrary decisions by social services or judges. The secrecy that cloaks family courts was intended to protect the children from unwarranted intrusion. It was never intended to prevent the judgment of professionals from being questioned. And I cannot believe that we're unable to find a way to provide transparency in these life-affecting decisions while shielding the child from public or press view. Now, throughout the speech, I have avoided the phrases that Labour so loves, like feral children, and the Tory labels of dysfunctional families and broken society, designed to create a divide between the supposed nice us and the nasty them. I mean, frankly, we are all in this together. I think that families are pretty amazing, and despite all the predictions of the pundits, they have continued to thrive. So let us join with families and make sure they have the tools that they need, time for both father and mother to bond with their children by offering extended parental leave, supporting parents juggling work and family with free part-time childcare in the early years, development opportunities through enriched childcare for even the youngest children so they're not shackled by background and income, support for families in the crises of mental illness and family breakup. It may be news to David Cameron and Gordon Brown that we live in the 21st century, but real families, our modern families, know who they are and how they want to live. We Liberal Democrats will support them and celebrate them, all of them. Thank you.